Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
All right, so I tried to make the entire thing as interactive as possible. I understand that because you guys are because of the audio, it might be kind of difficult to kind of chime in when I ask a question. But I'd like for you guys to, if you have questions, put it in the chat, and Stella would kind of speak out loud. So if you can all please put your audio on mute, so that way there's no interference. And then if I ask a question and you want to share, depending on how large the crowd is, you might be able to unmute yourself or just type your questions in the chat. How does that sound? Does that sound okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Great. All right. So today I will be talking to you about studying habits for long-term retention. My name is Dr. Judith Uchidiono. I am currently a postdoc at Carnegie Mellon University. You guys can you guys see my screen okay? Okay.
Yes.
All right, good. And Stella, if you can also unmute yourself, so that way if you can kind of chime in with things from the chat if they have questions, or just to kind of help me moderate since I can't see anything else. Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
All right. So first of all, I just want you guys to know that 2020 was hard. I want to remind you that 2020 was a very hard year, right? And we are still living through the effects of 2020. There's COVID, right? There's a lot of like unrest in the world. And so if this year, well, last year was a particularly hard year for you, I just want to remind us that we are all alive. So we have to be thankful for that. And for now, one of the most important things that we can do is prioritize our basic needs and just be kind to yourself, right? Give yourself the grace to not be excellent by your own standards, all right? Because it was a particularly hard year. So today I'll be telling you about study techniques that are effective, and a lot of them are evidence-based. For context, I have a PhD in human-computer interaction, but my research focus is really learning sciences, thinking about how children learn and how we can use technology to maximize their learning. So this is what I do for a living. And I also talk about how you can incorporate some of these techniques into your teaching. All right, so this is me. This is baby Judith, 2-year-old Judith, and I bring this in here because not only do I do this professionally, I've also had a lot of years of going to school. So, like most of us went to 2 years of kindergarten, and if you are in the U.S., you went to preschool and you went to kindergarten. If you're in Nigeria or any other part of the world, you went to nursery. You went to nursery too. I don't know if the system is still that way. But I did that, and I went to elementary school, which is like primary school. I went to secondary school. I did 1 year, which is like a college transition where you're like planning to take all your exams. I did that. And then I have an undergraduate degree that took 4 years. I have a first master's, a second master's, and a PhD. That is 28 years of my life being a student, and I still work at a university. So I guess you guys are going to be thinking, what is wrong with her? Like, why have you spent so much of your time in school, right? So of course, I have to enjoy being in the school, but on the other hand, it's like just like circumstances of my career has kind of given me a lot of experience practicing a lot of these things I'm going to share with you. Also, professionally, I do research teaching kids in rural villages in Tanzania how to learn with technology. Also, I do a lot of work in after-school programs here in the U.S. where I help students learn math, literacy, game design, and robotics. And I've gotten the privilege of sharing my work all over the world. If you guys don't mind, if you make sure that all your audio is muted, except for Stella. Okay. So I've gotten the privilege of getting to share my work in a lot of parts of the world, and I'm very grateful for that. So the one thing I want to start with tell everyone is this idea of learning, right? Learning really means not only the ability for you to retain something, so not just to take it in, right? But you have to be able to reproduce it. So it's not just reading something, you have to be able to reproduce it when you're on a test. That is what learning is. If you are able to retain something, but you are not able to reproduce it, then you haven't learned it, right? So think about learning in this way, a combination of retention and reproduction. All right, so there's in your brain, right? There's working and there's long-term memory, right? So long-term memory is where your brain stores everything in your life, right? And you guys will you notice that sometimes you know something, maybe you remembered it like in 2010, but now in 2020 you don't remember anymore, right? It doesn't mean it's not in your brain anymore. That's not true. It's in your brain, but something can trigger something and then you remember. So that's kind of like the things that are kind of happening right now in your like in the forefront. Those things are in working memory. So those things are very easy for you to recall, which is kind of like the yellow part right here, right? You can very easily retrieve it. But this part right here is like working memory. It's like your long-term memory. Everything is stored there, and you might have to go through a very complicated path for your brain to actually be able to recall it. Have you guys ever been to a grocery store, or like for you guys in Nigeria, have you ever been to a market before?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So if you've been to a market before, so let's say, let me take who lives in, okay, so for those of you who live in Abuja, right? I'll take Abuja for example. If you've gone to Wuse market before, that's a very big market, right? And you might know the one guy or the one person that sells the kind of spices that you want. So if I drop you off in at the front of the market, you can walk your way right there, right? But because you've done it
Yes.
over and over again, you know how to get it. But imagine if I tell you just random, go and look for Yusuf in the market. I don't tell you anything, right? Or maybe you've been there before. It's very hard for you to recall things that you don't know if you don't have a lot of practice. Kind of the same way. The more that you practice something, the more that you try to retrieve something, the more that you practice going there back and forth, the easier you remember this, the easier it is for you to remember the path. That's just the general rule of things. And that applies to places that you go, it applies to your brain, everything. So now let's talk about the idea of intelligence, right? So we all know, we've all heard about the term intelligence. Sometimes we think people are intelligent, we then think intelligence is a different thing. But do you guys think that intelligence is something that you're born with? Or do you think intelligence is like a muscle that you can build? Anyone want to volunteer?
I think intelligence is something you're born with.
Okay. Anyone else want to try? You guys think intelligence is something you're born? You think it's what? Somebody started speaking, but then I lost you.
It's both.
I think intelligence is naturally.
Okay, so I think somebody is speaking. I think Edward is speaking, but your internet is kind of choppy. If you can type in the chat. Actually, for the most of you guys, if you can type in the chat, let me see what you guys think. All right, so the person on the Infinix Hot 5 says it's something you build up. King says it's something you're born with. Edward, what do you think? You can type in the chat. All right, it's something you build up. All right. Okay, so lots of different people says, so Bolitito sent me privately. Edward is like, you're born something you're born with, but you have to build it up. So Edward is kind of like towing the fine line right here, right? So you have to pick a side, right? Something you build up for sure. So these are very wonderful responses. I'll tell you guys that for the most part, intelligence is actually something that you build up. Like 80% of intelligence is what you build up. Some people are genetically gifted, of course, right? But for most people in life, if you work hard and you practice and you put in the work, you can actually build up your intelligence a lot. I'll talk more about building intelligence at the end of the talk. But the one thing I want to kind of start with when you're thinking about how to study is understanding that if you are in a place, right, that doesn't celebrate you, if you're in a place that you don't feel like you belong, you are not going to thrive there. or rather, it's going to be extremely difficult for you to thrive there. You have whenever you're in a place that you're learning, a place that you want to learn, you have to feel and be surrounded by people who make you feel like you can do this. Because that helps you believe that you can do this, and that belief can help you thrive. This is just not something that I'm telling you. This is something that science has shown have evidence. So this is a study that was conducted, and they had two groups of people, right? In a university, they brought European Americans, people who started out with a higher GPA from their secondary school, right? And they brought African Americans who started with a lower GPA from their secondary school. And throughout the college, there was nothing. You just let them go through school the way it was, right? Throughout the entire time, the grades differences, yes, everybody improved, but throughout the entire time, the gap between them was kind of like the same. So imagine one person started at a B level, the other person started at a C level. At the end, the first person went at A, second person went to B. The gap is still the same, even though they all improved. But the second group of people, they had the African Americans who they brought with the same level as the first group of students, but they also added a belonging booster. And the belonging booster was like, giving them exposure to people who believed in their abilities, right? Giving them exposure when they struggled with things, giving them mentors, right? Giving them channels when they struggled with things to go find help. And at the end of the college, the second group of kids actually performed very similarly to the European Americans, right? And the only difference that they made with them was reminding them throughout their 4 years that they belonged in that space, right? And this was a place that they were fit to be. So please don't underestimate the power. And if you are any parents on this place, don't underestimate the power of reminding your child that they belong in a space and surrounding them with people. For you students, don't underestimate the power of surrounding yourself with friends who make you believe in your abilities. That makes a huge difference in how you actually perform in real life, and science has proven it. So to begin, let's talk about studying techniques. What studying techniques do you think are effective? I think just for the sake of time, because we are at 12:15, maybe I talk about the first few and then you guys can chime in. So reading materials for a very long time. What do you guys think? And you can add in the chat. Do you think that reading materials for a very long time is something that is effective? Okay. All right. All right. So a lot of people say yes. Anyone else? I have Chidiberry and Edward who say yes. Anyone else think that reading materials? Okay. Infinix Hot 5 says it's effective. A lot of people say it's effective. Okay. Good. In actuality, because let me tell you something, right? Reading something is just being exposed, right? You're just exposing yourself to the content, right? So has anybody seen 500 Naira notes before? I'm sure you guys have all seen a 500 Naira note before, right? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
All right, can you draw it? If I tell you don't cheat, like right now, draw it. Can you try to draw? Anyone? Does anyone think they can draw a 500 Naira note perfectly? Okay, Galaxy tab A. Nope. Okay. And for those of you who say you can't draw it, for example, King, how many times in your life do you think you've seen a 500 Naira note? If you just guess. Especially with the faces on it. Yeah, so when I say draw it, I mean especially with the faces, all the inscriptions on it, everything. You've probably seen it 2,000 times. So do you think it's just the consuming of the content that is helping you learn it? Because I mean, that's the same thing as reading something 2,000 times, right? Do you know why you can't draw it? Because you've never had to recall it, right? I promise you that if you do this exercise right now and you actually force yourself to try to draw it, right? Next time, if somebody asks you to draw the 2,000 naira note, you'll probably be able to do it. That's the same thing, right? No, because reading is not learning again is not about just consumption. It's about consumption and reproduction, right? So and turns out you guys, there's nothing unique about you guys. Most people who were asked in the study, most people who were asked to draw a quarter, the same quarter, these are the different things that they drew, right? Most people think, okay, you know what? Everybody remembers in God we trust, right? But you see how the character, the person on the coin for everyone is different? Because people don't remember those kinds of details because they don't have to recall it. So the point is, like, cramming is not effective for long-term retention. It might be effective for to say it to somebody in 5 minutes, but reading a lot is not effective for long-term retention. You guys take that away from your minds. And the reason why it's so bad is because it tricks you into thinking that you actually know. Have you guys been in test situations where you read a lot? You did a whole lot of reading, and then when you got the test, you couldn't remember. Have you guys experienced that? Yeah, so that happens all the time. It's because, again, you are doing a lot of consumption and you're not recalling enough. Yeah, so you're saying if you cram to pass the exam, then you're not learning it long term, right? You're just doing for the exam. But if I ask you in if I tell you how can you apply this in real life, you can't because you've forgotten. Instead, there's something called spaced repetition.
Yeah.
Rather than just reading everything all at once, you read it now. The way to do it is called spaced repetition. You read it now, allow a little bit of time to pass, allow a little bit of forgetting to happen, and then you read it again. This is the reason why if people kind of read content over the whole semester instead of once during the exam, that's why you do way better, because you're doing something called spaced repetition. So how do you practice this? Please don't spend several long hours studying for one test. You might be able to survive the test and get an average score, but if it's something that you're interested in actually learning, you are not learning it, right? The way to do is after each class, quickly review the materials, identify the things that you don't. If you have questions, put it into the chat and I can go back and review the chat. If you have questions, put it into the chat and I'll go back and review. Okay, so after each class, you can quickly review the material. Okay, so after each class, identify the things that you don't understand, and then ask the teacher if you don't understand something. All right, and also make sure you review your notes periodically. How often periodically?
Yes.
Also make sure you allow a little forgetting to happen. Is everyone muted? Because I keep hearing an echo. Everyone muted? Because I keep hearing an echo. Make sure you stay muted, okay? Make sure you stay muted, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so y'all keep going. All right, what about testing? Just taking tests. Do you guys think that is an effective way of learning?
Yes.
Put it in the chat so I can see. Okay, just put it in the chat. Let me stop share. Okay. It is. Have you guys experienced something where, and listen, this has happened to me, right? Where you study for a test, you go and take the test and you don't remember, and you saw a question in the test, right? And then when you come out of the test, they were like, did you see this question on this test? And they were like, the answer was this. Like, oh no, I wrote the wrong answer. And 20 years later, you can retell that story perfectly. Like for me, when I took WAEC, right? Because I went to high school in Nigeria, right? It's like, man, on that exam, there was this question. They asked about this I had to balance this equation or something like that. And I didn't remember. And now, upon 20 years later, I can recall that thing. But even though I studied it in the test, I couldn't remember. You know why? Because I had been tested. I had tried to recall it unsuccessfully. I had gone out, and just by somebody asking me the question and just telling me the answer then, right? that has solidified the learning for me. So yes, it's learning that I didn't need that learning because I needed it more on the tests, right? But if you're actually to measure learning, right, that thing of testing and recalling is like one of easily the most effective way to learn anything. So how do you put this in practice, right? I said it's one of the most effective techniques for studying. The more you try to recall without aid, don't cheat, right? The easier it is for you to recall on an actual test. So remember, right, in the picture that I showed you, the more that you practice going to the store, you remember the road somewhere, right? The easier it is for you to go there by yourself in the future. So there's this professor called Henry Ruttinger. He also has a book I'll show you guys later. The effects of testing. He gave all students in his class a passage to read. And then half of the students, he tested them immediately. The other half, he didn't test them, right? And then a week later, he gave everybody a test. Students that got tested immediately scored 50% higher than the other students. Just because they've already gotten practice once recalling it, right? And the other kids, they don't have any practice recalling it before. It's such a powerful way to learn. So how do you read it? How do you do it? Read each chapter of a book and test yourself after. You see those questions at the back of the textbook that everybody ignores? Those things are powerful. And when you're doing it, don't keep flipping through. Like, don't keep flipping through the book and saying, oh, okay, this is what the answer is. No. Read it and try to recall. And even if you struggle, that's not a problem, right? Allow yourself to forget a little bit more. Then maybe like 2 days later or 3 days later, read the chapter again. I promise you, when you read the chapter again, when you see those questions a second time, you will have the answers, right? And now when you see those same questions on the test, they'll be easy because they'll come to you like this, right? So you gotta read, allow some forgetting to happen, right? Test yourself without aid. If you cheat yourself and you try to look at the answers as you are, look at the answers as you are looking at the questions, you won't learn it. Just try to do it without aid and think about it. Like, go about your day thinking about what is the answer to this question. And then when you go back and read it again, I promise you will never, ever forget that question. All right, so use questions at the back of a textbook or create questions yourself. You don't have to have, if you have like a notes, create the questions yourself. Again, don't cheat. Look at memory. Don't look at memory aids to answer them. You can create questions on flashcards. Flashcards are fantastic because you can flashcards are, does everyone know what flashcards are? They're like a deck of cards, but it's like cardboard cards. You can make questions and have a stack of cards, and you just walk around with them, right? And randomly in the middle of the day, you can just flip through them, right? And look at the question so that way it can help you recall. Remember, the thing is read, quiz yourself, review. You can rest. You need to rest. If you don't rest, it doesn't work. Remember, read again, quiz, review, rest. That's just a sequence of things. And that really solidifies the way that you can recall something. Much better than if you just cram. All right, so the thing of one of the last styles I'm going to talk about is learning styles. You know how they say some people are visual people, some people are kinesthetic people, so they need to touch things. Other people are like auditory people, they need to hear things. Do you guys think that this idea of like people having different learning styles is effective for learning? Put in the chat. All right, a lot of people say yes. Okay. Learning styles, do you think that's effective? Okay, and everyone make sure you're muted.
Let me know if I should mute everybody.
Yeah, if you can mute everyone, that'd be great.
Then you have to unmute yourself then. So I'm doing that.
That's
right.
fine. And if you can also make me a co-host, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, so learning styles, it seems like everyone thinks they're effective. Actually, you know, the science is very mixed on it. Science says actually it's not very effective. They're not as important as people think they are. The only exception is when you have a deficiency in one style. And so you have to use the others more. So for example, I have a very low attention span. I cannot read books for a very long time. I cannot read papers for a very long time without losing my attention, no matter how hard I try, right? And so most of my books, most of my papers, everything I have to proofread when I'm reviewing something that I write, I have to do it by listening, like text to speech. But I'm deficient in one style. If you're not deficient in another style, some people think you can prefer one that's great, use it, but actually scientifically it doesn't make that much of a difference. Otherwise, use all of them to maximize your learning, right? You can read something, then you can watch a video about it, and then you can figure out how you can apply it in real life practically. All of those things help to solidify learning things that you're trying to learn. Okay, so last thing is mental models. A mental model is, let's say we are talking about gravity, for example, right? So this is a way to learn gravity for those of you science students. This is a formula. Or a mental model is you're thinking, you know what, I'm on the top of a hill and I drop a stone and gravity is the thing that makes it fall to the ground. If you can relate things like that, or let's talk about, let me think about a concept that is, centrifugal force. I'm thinking about, I don't know if a physics reference is something that you guys would get. I know some people would get it. But if you're thinking about things that you're spinning all around, like in a roller coaster, right? Or like one of those amusement parks where they strap you to things you're spinning really fast, right? And it's trying to pull you to the middle. So yeah, they strap you to the back so that way you don't fly into the middle. Mental models, things that you can relate something you're learning, no matter how complicated, right? No matter how complicated, you can relate something you're learning to something that you already know. I think that's effective for learning. In the chat, do you guys think mental models are effective for learning? Okay, a lot of enthusiastic answers. Yes, you guys are right. It is one of the most effective ways for learning. Like if I promise you that, like in physics, in chemistry, and I learned this thing too late in my life, right? I always struggled. Math made a lot of sense to me when I was a kid, because math, it was logical. I could make sense of it. Computer programming made a lot of sense to me, even in secondary school, because it was logic, right? I could think through problems and I could write it down. Physics, if it wasn't something that was like, if it wasn't something that was, what do you call it? That was relatable. If it was something that I keep talking, I like something like Avogadro's law, for example, right? Only made sense to me as an adult. But if I didn't think my words and I just memorized the law or memorized the formula, it never makes sense. And that's horrible for learning. So it turns out science actually shows that this is actually effective. So in this study, they quizzed Brazilian banana sellers on complex mathematical concepts, right? For example, giving change, but giving them hard subtraction problems, weight of the bananas, and they couldn't answer the questions, right? They're like, okay, I don't know this subtraction. But when you give it to them, okay, if you sell one banana, or if you sell banana, this thing is $10, and the person gives you $5, or if you sell the banana is $10,000, the person gives you $7,500. What's the change? And once you put the exact same question in a context that they understood, right, they were able to give responses to very complex mathematical concepts, even without a day of education. That's how powerful it is. And they scored very highly on the quiz, even without actually ever going to school and learning those things in class. So when they give them a similar quiz without the banana context, they failed woefully, right? Because context really matters. The way that you apply it is make sure that you can explain any concept in your own words or relate it to something. And the power of this is when you, in your brain, when you relate something that is new to knowledge that you can very easily remember, right? The retrieval in your brain is so much easier because you've already latched onto something. So if you can connect a new concept to something that you already know, explain it in your own words, teach somebody. Another very powerful way of learning is to explain it to somebody, right? That's the same thing. It's kind of like testing, repeated practice, and mental models put together in the same thing. Related to something that you already know. Remember, when you retrieve something, it's very pliable. So by pliable means that you can bend something. Have you guys ever experienced where you repeat something so much you don't even know if it's real, if it really happened or if it didn't happen anymore? Like something happened to you in your past, right? But you've told the story one way, and now you can't even tell this, like if the story, what your version of the story is real or if it's fake, because this is how you've already like molded that memory to kind of like fit your narrative. So that is used a lot in psychotherapy, but is also very useful for learning. Finally, some other tips. Remember, try to answer questions before you see the answer. Teach others. Listen, I cannot tell you how powerful this is. If you have never, for those of you who have been tutors, I know, Edward, you've been a tutor before. Maybe part of the reason why you did so well in school is because you were teaching other people. You have no idea how powerful it is as a way of learning things. You guys practice it. Teach your friends, even if your younger siblings who don't even know what you're talking about, try to explain it to them in a way a 5-year-old will understand, right? And I promise you that is extremely powerful. Use mnemonics. So mnemonics are like short forms of things. So the way we say in the US is PEMDAS, but in Nigeria is BODMAS, right? Bracket of division, multiplication. So far as thinking about the order of which you do a complex multi annotation problem. Have you ever solved a problem in the shower? So a lot of times when I solve my problems, it happens in the shower. I've been struggling with this thing for a long time, and it just comes to me there, right? So take advantage of those opportunities where like you've allowed some forgettings to happen, and just let it be in your background. Let it be in in your unconscious memory, right? Yours happens in the kitchen, right? So it's like you've forgotten about it, and it just comes to you, right? That's because your brain is still, even when you're not consciously doing the work of trying to remember something, I promise you that your brain is still doing the work in your background, right? Just give yourself a little bit of time. The only problem happens when you don't practice. You don't give yourself enough time to study, right? And you have to go and do a test. But if you just with advanced planning, you guys can all be excellent students. And I'm not just telling you because I am here to encourage you. I'm here because I have a lot of scientific proof that it does. This is what I do for a living. And I promise you that it works. So when you get an assignment, remember to read the questions. When you get an assignment, the way to do it is read the questions immediately. Just read the assignment immediately. And then try to recall what you know about the answers. Don't look at the book. Spend 30 minutes after that reviewing the materials and leave it alone until the next day when you're ready to complete it. Same applies to a test, all these things. Review, maybe not on the active test, but when you get materials to prepare for a test in advance, review things and later you can recall it. I know somebody raised their hand to ask a question. The person on the techno? Okay, so Cessa says, what if I don't know what reading method works for me? Don't worry about what reading method works for you because they all work equally well. Does that make sense? They all work equally well. Just use a combination of methods and look at the one that you think is you can access at the time. But don't lose sleep worrying about what works for me the most. Because how many hours should a student study in a day? I actually think you shouldn't study for a long time in a day. I think that if you are not like in a high pressure situation, nobody should be studying more than 1 or 2 hours a day. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. Nobody, you won't retain anything you're learning. Especially as a student, all the time you're spending in class, what do you think you're doing? Don't you think you're studying in class? Except like you're not paying attention. You see what I'm saying? Except you are not paying attention. I promise you that if you spend your whole day in class, and after class at some time, those of you that are in boarding school, spend like 1 hour or two or your prep. 1 hour of your prep, really reviewing what you learned that day in class. I promise you, you are way, way, way ahead on the test before you get to the test. Because you review it, by the time the teacher comes the next day, guess what? You remember what they taught you the last time. So you remember what they taught you the last time. The new thing they give you are able to latch onto it, right? You go to your prep literally 1 or 2 hours at the very maximum. Anything more than that outside the school, you're wasting your time. And then if you're doing a test, all right, so if you have an exam coming up in a week, what's the most effective way to study for it? I would say that first of all, you review the materials right now, right? So not deep reading, review the materials and test yourself. Let's say you have a week, test yourself right now. Know what you don't know. So first of all, by the time you say, I'm supposed to take this test in a week, and man, 70% of the questions that they asked me I saw on this test I gave myself, I couldn't answer it. You already know the kinds of areas you need help with, just based on that preliminary test, right? And then over the course of your week, read those parts, try to answer those questions that you are struggling with. Reread, retest like that until you're ready to go until the day of the test. What if you have a lot of tests 10 minutes apart, so 5 tests in a day? Should you still read immediately after class? Yes. If you get to a place where you are having to study for 5 exams because you're not ready for any of them, you haven't done your work throughout the semester. But remember, if you, at the end of your day, you review everything that you learned in class for that day, 1 hour tops, right? By the time you're studying for the test, all of this is just review material. You're just flipping through. You're not doing any deep reading. Even after you're reading and you get confused, what should you do? Ask somebody who knows. And don't leave the person until you understand. So let's say someone says, oh, okay, you know what, this is and don't just use shame and walk away. No. Let the person, if you don't understand, tell the person, listen, explain it differently. I don't understand. Let the person relate it to something you already know. Like, try to explain it to the person and until you understand, until you're like, hey, don't leave the person. Also, your teachers, right? I know when I was in high school, I don't know if you guys are in Lagos, high school, I went to Janiki in Lagos for high school. If you're in Janiki, I'm giving you a big shout out. But I remember that I didn't think I could ask the teacher. I could go to the staff room or ask the teacher for it. But teachers, nobody asks teachers questions. And people should ask teachers questions. If you don't understand, I would say that you should ask your teacher or ask other students. So that way you don't feel threatened. And stay with them and ask them on different ways until it makes sense. Until it makes sense. That's when you know you understand. If it doesn't make sense, no one says something you say could make sense, right? You don't understand. Keep asking the question until it makes sense. Okay? All right, so I'll go back. Any other questions before I go back? Imagine you have 2 difficult papers in a day. How do you juggle your time? So by difficult papers, do you mean papers that you have to write or papers that you have to read? Chidebere. You have to write. That one is more difficult. You have to start on time. So some people are faster writers than others. For somebody like me, I'm not a very fast writer. So what I would do in advance, I will make sure I have a good outline. Like for all papers, if you don't have an outline for your papers, you're planning to fail. Make sure you have an outline, like, okay, this section is for this. And it might just be paragraph by paragraph. What I actually do, so when I wrote my dissertation, a dissertation is a very long document. For me, it was a 200-page document. How do I write this thing? I literally had an outline first. I reviewed the outline with my teacher to say that, listen, this is going to be a good dissertation if you can write it. And then by everyone, I wrote, I want to write 2 paragraphs on this topic or 3 paragraphs, and I wrote the dates. So this is for Tuesday. So that way, when I'm going through, I already know, listen, Tuesday, my work is to write 3 paragraphs and I'm done, up to Wednesday. So you have to not only plan the amount of work you're going to do under your outline, you have to plan the time you're going to dedicate to it. In my school, you have 3 classes in the span of 2 hours concurrently. There's no time to read after a class. You can read, there is time to read after class because you're not in school all day. You're not in school all day. And I'm not going to say that tests are not stressful. Tests are particularly stressful. Tests don't give me anxiety anymore. But when I was growing up, I used to have a lot of anxiety for tests. But that's because the honest truth is I wasn't mostly prepared. When school was over, I just closed my books and I walked away. If every day trust me, if every day you are able to read just go over what you learned every day, and the parts that you don't understand that day, ask somebody. If you're able to do that, tests won't be so scary anymore. And I'll tell you why it works. Let me tell you something. When I was in Nigeria, when I was in high school, I was a standard C student. I was not a good student, right? I was just average. Yes, I had a lot of brilliant kids in my class, but again, I was just an average CB student, right? And then I came to the US for my undergrad, and my first year I had friends. So they used to do this thing where all my friends, everybody, if you got perfect A's, you get a plaque, like a plaque that you wear something on the president's list. I remember my first semester, all my friends got a 4.0. I got a 3.9, which is like the highest GPA is a 4.0. If you get straight A's, I got a 3.9 because I got an A- in one class. And all my friends were on stage and I was not on the stage. And I promised myself that day, that was the last day I was not going to be on that stage, right? But I surrounded myself with friends who had, who had high standards for themselves. And because of that, I couldn't slack. Whenever I had any questions, I actually spent time with the tutors. I wasn't necessarily reading, but I was spending time with the tutors. Whatever I didn't understand, I made sure the teacher helped me, the tutors, the TD, anybody who knew was my friend, right? And if I didn't make sense, if the work or the material did not make sense, I wasn't ready. I made sure that I understood. So by exams, some exams you won't even need to study because you already know enough of the materials. What if you're not the reading type? Like you don't read before the test. Well, if you don't read before a test at all and you don't know anything, you're going to fail, right? That's just what it comes down to. However, if you're not the reading type like me, right? I wasn't very good at reading lots of material because I have a very short attention span. Just spend a lot of time talking about the content with your friends. Just talk about the material with your friends, right? Talk about questions, like go through questions and say, okay, here's that question. How will you answer this question? And they will just talking about it. And somebody saying, you know what, let me look at this one and go through it. Just talking about it, you're studying. Studying, again, as I said, is one of the least effective ways to study is to put your face in the book and just keep reading. That's one of the least effective ways to study. Actually, going back and forth, quizzing, exchanging ideas is very powerful as a much more effective way to study. So I'm just going to round this out because we're going on to listen on time. Remember, learning is a muscle. Intelligence is mostly a muscle. Some people have some gifts when they are born, but the hard work is actually what determines how well you do. For the most part, not really that you're born with it. So anything you practice, you will get stronger at it. This book, Make It Stick, is one of my favorite books. It's by Peter Brown. I have a copy. I recommend it to everybody. If you really want to understand the science of learning, look up more scientific studies on how people learn and the most effective ways to learn. If you can get your hands on this book, I'd really recommend it. Some useful tools. If you're writing, and I don't know if you write with a computer, there's a tool called Grammarly that would help you proofread, help you with grammar. Like, see, this is correct, this is unclear. That really helps to help you proofread your papers if you can get access to this. Also, a tool called Brainscape. I think it's also on the phone. It's an app that will allow you to make flashcards for yourself. You can make the flashcard and you can also put the answer in a way that won't let you cheat. And you can kind of rate yourself. How well do you know this on a scale of 1 to 5? So that way you know what you need to go and practice more. And also when you test yourself, you know what you don't know. If you don't know what you don't know, you'll find out on the test. The test is not where you want to find out. Another tool called My Homework, which will help you plan. So you can kind of put all your homework in there at the beginning of the semester. So that way you know, you can plan, so that way you don't get caught up saying, okay, my God, this week I have 10,000 things due this week. You can plan in advance and say, man, this week things are coming, so I need to start in advance. Note taking is very powerful, either on paper or digitally, in your own handwriting, right? And not just copying. Knowing, trying to handwrite notes is actually a way of learning, and just making lists and scratching it off. Every day, if I don't want to be productive on a certain day, if I don't make a list, no matter how much I think I know what I'm going to do, I'm not productive. If I have a list on a whiteboard on paper of things I want to accomplish for today, and every day I scratch what I want to do, right? Then I can accomplish all my tasks for the day because I can see it. Again, I don't say that all of this is easy. Just get into the habit of reviewing your notes every day might not be the easiest thing. But if you really want to do well without really working that hard, I would recommend that you start adapting it. The last thing is this whole thing about our mindset. So we all get faced with decisions in life, right? Different, and you guys are really young, but like there's some decisions that you will make that will send you to a different path. So when I was young, I decided that, you know what, I wasn't really a reading person, like somebody said. So I was like, all biological sciences are not for me. All social sciences are not for me. I'm only going to stick to things that are logical, right? Math, computer programming. But you get an adult and you have to read, right? So it's because I told myself that reading was not my strength, right? And that cost me a lot of things that I would have done to improve myself growing up. I didn't do it, right? So you have to think about your challenge rather than things that block you. You have to think about them as challenges that you can overcome. I'm going to play this short video for you guys. And let me escape, make sure that you guys can hear the sound. Do I think, let's see. Imagine you have difficult with papers. Most people break down on the steps on multiple days. Yes, but I promise you that if you practice in advance, stress will become not stressful anymore. Do you think cramming is an effective way? It is not an effective way. It will help. It might help you because you just saw it. To like, if I tell you about the 500 naira notes, if you look at it right now, it might help you to do it immediately. But in 5 days, you've forgotten completely. I would only say you can cram if you're desperate and you must pass it and you have no other previous studying. But if you've done the work that you're supposed to do, you shouldn't be cramming. All right, so I'm going to share my sound because I want you guys to watch a quick 3-minute video. And please pay attention to this because it's really important.
Did you know there's a powerful relationship between what we believe about how we learn and our actual achievement? Dr. Carol Dweck studies students' beliefs about intelligence. What she found is that students generally hold one of two very different beliefs about intelligence. Some students have what she calls a fixed mindset. This is the belief that intelligence is a fixed trait that doesn't change much. So like eye color, these students believe you're born with a certain amount of intelligence and there's not much you can do to change it. Other students have a very different belief about intelligence. They have a growth mindset. They see intelligence more like a muscle. They understand that when you put in effort, you can get smarter. What we now know from study after study is that the more students have a growth mindset and believe that they can grow their intelligence, the better they do in school. Students with a growth mindset do better in school because they approach learning differently than students with a fixed mindset. For students with a fixed mindset, their goal in school is to show how smart they are, or hide how dumb they think they are. This makes sense, right? If you think you're just born smart or dumb, you want to make sure you show that you are smart. So this makes fixed mindsetters much less likely to ask questions in class or seek out help from peers or teachers, because that would involve showing that they don't know something. Students with a growth mindset, on the other hand, have the goal to learn, so they're more likely to ask a question if they don't understand, or to seek out help, or try a new strategy if they are struggling. When it comes to the amount of effort you have to put forth, students with a fixed mindset and students with a growth mindset see that differently as well. Those with a fixed mindset actually see effort as proof of low ability. They think that if you have to try hard, that means you aren't very smart. Whereas students with a growth mindset see effort as the way that you get smarter. How students react when they are faced with a challenge or setback in their learning is what really differentiates those with a fixed mindset and those with a growth mindset. Students with a fixed mindset will think that they are not smart and will likely give up on a task. Those with a growth mindset tend to work harder because they see it as an opportunity to learn and grow their intelligence. So if we can all grow our intelligence, are we saying that all students have equal ability? We aren't saying that everyone has the same level of intelligence. Having a growth mindset doesn't mean that you believe everyone has equal ability in every subject matter. It also doesn't mean that we believe some students aren't more talented in certain subjects than others. It means that you believe that no matter where a person is now, they can always improve with effort, good strategies, and help. And that's the number one piece of information you should take away from this lesson. No matter where a person is now, they can always improve with effort, good strategies, and help. Did you know there's a powerful related growth mindset?
Okay, so remember, the harder you work and the smarter you work, the better you perform. It's that simple, right? All people that are able to study every day, review their notes every day, they are working hard and they perform better. If you wait till the last minute, if you wait to try to study for 5 hours, the information that you've learned over a semester, imagine you take a class twice a week, let's say 3 hours a week. You've done that for 12 weeks. That's 36 hours. You try to learn that 36 hours of content, right? You try to learn it in what they call it in 5 hours. You're not going to learn it, even if you study 5 hours very religiously. But imagine if you've been just reviewing your notes. And again, don't study it. Review your notes every at the end of every day, just to make sure it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, go and learn it. All right? Ask somebody who knows. Work smart. Find the learning styles that work for you better. So if you're better, if you are worse at one than the other, try to adapt the one that works better for you. And for parents, encourage hard work, not good grades. Right? If your child is always getting an A before you, even if your child doesn't try at all, then your child needs to be challenged more. That's what it is. Stop telling people and stop telling yourself that you're smart. Stop. That's the biggest lie you can tell yourself. Commend yourself for working hard. You're like, listen, I have put in the work. And remember, work is not just studying. Work is talking to people. Work is teaching people. Work is reviewing your notes. Work is asking your teacher questions in class when it doesn't make sense. All of that is work. And if you put in all that work and you do well, commend yourself. Give yourself a clap for putting in all that work and for it paying off at the end. So this last exercise is reframing common school challenges. These are things that we tell ourselves that prevent us from actually doing well. So I'm going to, the first one is, I'm not good at math. A lot of people say I'm not good at math, right? Can you tell me a way, and that is a very fixed mindset thing to say. I'm just going to tell you off the bat. Can you guys tell me, how do I reframe I'm not good at math to be a growth mindset thing that would help you work harder at math? I'll give you an example. Let me take the first one, right? I would, instead of saying I'm not good at math, I would say instead, math is harder for me than a lot of other students. But I know that if I work extra hard, right, and I go to the teacher for help, I will get much better at math. Rather than just blanket saying I'm bad at math. What about, I'll give you another one, and then you guys tell me things in the comments that you struggle with that we can reframe. Another one is, I'm too shy to do any presentations. Does anybody identify with this? You're too shy for public speaking? Yep. Some people say yes, right? You're too shy for, yeah. So you say public speaking, like I naturally talk really fast. And I'm talking to you guys now, I'm getting excited, and so I'm talking a little bit faster. But professionally, I have to practice a lot talking slower, right? And I've practiced a lot, and when I give my professional talks, or when I give talks to people, I am able to talk much slower because I'm talking to myself, talk slower than what feels normal. And so I'm happy, after a lot of you who are not, a lot of people are not shy of public speaking, but there are many people who struggle with this for different reasons. Some people saying, you know what, I have a stutter, so that makes them anxious. I don't know if my people are going to understand what I'm saying. I talk too fast. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at writing. I'm not good at chemistry. All those things that you tell yourself I'm not good at, change that language. I need you to understand that, yes, you might struggle with it right now more than people. But if you put in more work, if you ask questions on the things that you don't understand, you become much, much better at it. And if you have that mindset, I promise you that there's nothing that you cannot conquer. Does anybody want to share anything in the comments? I think this is, I'm going to stick to this as the last slide. Remember, take care of yourself. All those things are other good tips, and make sure you rest. If you're not resting, if you're not sleeping at night, you're not going to learn. Your body needs to rest to learn. But I want you guys to share in the comments things that you think that you struggle with, things that you think you're not good at. So everyone share in the comments something that you're not good at, and let's help you reframe it from a fixed mindset to something that is a growth mindset perspective. Okay. King Dogara says math, right? All right, a lot of people math, chemistry. Okay, keep going. Chemistry, English, physics, chemistry, math. An average math student, economics, techno spark. I promise you that if you're no, it can be anything, Edward. It can be, so if you think you're an average math student, I promise you that with work and a growth mindset, you can become an excellent student. I'm not saying this because I want you to feel better. I'm telling you because I know that scientifically, and I think about the brain and how we learn a lot, it's true. You're not good at swimming. That's another thing. Okay, so I easily get distracted in class. In Phoenix Hot 5, you're my spirit animal. I get distracted very easily too. Okay, so for those of you that have a subject, a lot of people have subjects. I am not good at math. I'm not good at physics. I'm not good at English. I'm not good at chemistry, right? Instead of saying, just remove it from your head right now, disabuse yourself. It's not true that you're not good at it. Take that away from you. That's not true, right? The way to reframe it is, I am currently, tell yourself, right now, say it out to yourself. I am currently struggling at math. Say that. I am currently struggling with math. However, if I put in the work, practicing, testing myself, and asking people for help, say that. I am currently, so instead of saying I'm not good at math, say I am currently struggling at blah. Okay? If I put in the work, testing myself, reading over the long period of time, asking people to help me until it makes sense, I will become much, much better at something. Okay? And again, I'm not just saying it because I want to motivate you all. I'm saying it because this is actually true. Is there a necessity, but been a science student in secondary school, but my uni entails accounting? Yes, so you might have to put in more work than others. Sese at, no, this is Anthony. You might have to put in more work than others at accounting, but you can become just as good as accounting as you are at science, right? Is there a solution to reading and not remembering during exams? It happens a lot. That's because you read and you didn't try to test yourself before you got to the exam. So that way you didn't know what you didn't know, right? When you read, test yourself and don't cheat. So that way you know what you don't know and you can practice a little bit more. I don't enjoy reading. Chidebere, John, there's a long line of us who don't enjoy reading. The way that I will tell you is try to read more and try to read things that you enjoy. The trick is you don't enjoy reading because you don't read things that you enjoy. Read more things that you enjoy. The things that you don't enjoy, try to learn in other ways. Talk to people, get someone to help you, right? Another strategy that I use, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So listening to it, I can stay through a whole book, 9 hours. But if I'm reading it on paper, by the third page, I'm already distracted. I try to study it though. I hate the course. Thanks to the lecturer too. That's another thing. You don't have interest. But if you have to do something that you're not interested in, if you have to get through a course, then figure out ways for yourself to get interested in it. Or you don't even have to like it. That's the thing. You don't have to like everything that you do. You just have to pass, right? You just have to pass. And I need you guys to really believe that you can do anything that you put your mind to. People don't just say that because they want to make you feel better. People tell you that because it's true. Anything that you put in the hard work to do, you can do it. Anything. Yes. So like, hi mama, yes, I'm currently struggling at math. If I put in the work, I will become much better. That's exactly the way to, and don't just say this to me. I want you to write it on your own paper, put it on a poster. You can see it every day, right? Repeat this to yourself. Do not let something that you think you're not good at defeat you. You are the person. I mean, math is not even a human being, right? Math is not a thing. You can defeat anything that you put your mind to. I can't do acro. I can't do swimming. The same attitude, right? I am currently not good at it. But once I take the classes, once I practice, once I do all the work, I will become much better. Do you think that sometimes it's not about the subject, it's about the teacher? 1000%. Some teachers are horrible. I agree with you. And if you have a teacher who is horrible, who is not able to teach you, find somebody else who can teach you. Find another student who understands, or another teacher who can explain to you. And if you don't have that, talk to your parents to see if they can find you a lesson teacher or somebody who can teach you in a way that you enjoy. If somebody teaches you in a way that you enjoy, that's the person you need to latch onto. Can not liking a particular teacher affect your performance on the subject? Of course, yes. And if you don't like the teacher, it's the same thing. It's like, do you like the do you not just like the teacher's attitude? Is the teacher mean? Otherwise, can you see if you can try to work with the teacher? Otherwise, try to find somebody else who can help you. For some reason, you get angry when you read physics. That is normal. There's a lot of anxiety related to different subjects. But instead of getting angry, tell yourself that you are just struggling with it currently. This anger that you feel currently, right? All your math teachers have been bad. Same thing. This anger, this anxiety that you feel currently is because you don't understand. But once you understand it, you will not be anxious. You will not be angry anymore. And I want you to look forward to not being angry. Look forward to not being anxious. All right, I'm trying to get through the questions. I think have I answered all the questions that everyone has? And all my math teachers have been bad. I felt the exact same way until like SS2, right? When I had a really good math teacher. And that is the math teacher that reminded me that I was good at math, that taught me that I was good at math. Before that, I thought I was just basic, but I had one good teacher. And some people are lucky that for example, they might have a parent who likes a specific thing, right? Like I like math, I like computer programming, and as a result, I think that my child also likes math and like computer programming because there's a lot of positive reinforcement, right? And I enjoy teaching math, I enjoy teaching programming. And so my kid, even though he's young, can pick up a lot of those things. So many times you just have to find somebody who's good at it. And it doesn't have to be your teacher, it can be your friend, it can be your junior, it can be anyone who can just help you learn something. Is it okay to set high standards for tests and not feel bad for meeting your standards? Should I lower my standards? I think that your standard should not be a grade. Your standard should be your best effort. Right? If you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, listen, I did my best. Right? If you can sleep with yourself sleep with your conscience at night saying that I did my best, that's enough. Remove your expectations on grades. Set your expectations on how much work you put into the work, because that way you can hold yourself accountable, right? What if you get there and you get sick and you can't do the test, right? So I don't know if this is a thing in Nigeria anymore, where like you go and do a test and somebody cheats and they cancel all the things, right? Or somebody they sell people's results. So in my days, this is sell people's results. And when you sell people's results, then you get an E, even though you work for an A. So you cannot put your hope on a grade. You cannot put your hope on what somebody else thinks about you. It has to be on the amount of effort. Your effort is enough, but don't lie to yourself. If you do something and you get an A without trying, you skated by. But remember, you have to work hard. How do you get rid of external pressure when you have to write an exam like JAMB? I think you surround yourself with people who don't think it's a big deal. Right? And also think about the worst case scenario. So you fail. Would they flog you? Right? Think about the worst case scenario and think about a way for you to adapt if the worst case scenario happens. Plan for that. Once you embrace the worst thing that can possibly happen, then everything else, you can only go higher from there. All right, I think that was my talk. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope this was helpful for you all. I'm gonna put my email in the chat. If you guys specifically have questions, just email me and I'll be happy to send you resources or send you resources or even talk to you to see how I can help. And my website is judithu.com. All right, Stella, you can take over.
Thank you, Dr. Judith. So I think there was one more comment. Is there a way you can tell your teacher if he or she is being too fast for your level of understanding?
Yes, do exactly that. Tell your teacher that they're being too fast for your level of your understanding. Right? I mean, some teachers, if a teacher is mean, right? This one, if a teacher is mean, right, and says and doesn't want to answer you, then that teacher is not a good teacher. Find another teacher that can help you. But if you tell a teacher, I don't understand, can you please repeat it? Most teachers are going to repeat it. Don't be afraid to tell. As long as you're polite and you're respectful, most people would do it. How can you get better when you're constantly being compared to your brother? I think that sometimes it depends on this family situation. That this happens a lot. Some people are unfortunate or fortunate that they have siblings who do really well and they constantly get compared. I think that if it's possible, tell your parents how that makes you feel. Literally say, listen, you keep comparing me to my brother and we have different kinds of gifts. We have some people, we have to work at different paces for different things. The more you compare me, the worse I do because it gives me anxiety, things that I should relax for. I go in there with anxiety and that makes me worse. Some people have parents who they cannot have these kinds of conversations with, understandably. If you do, find people, remove yourself from that situation. If you have to study when your brother is not there, if your brother is making you feel worse about yourself, then you shouldn't study around your brother. Don't talk about school with your brother. Surround yourself with people who think you're amazing. Surround yourself with people who think that with effort you can do it. And just ignore. Okay. Oh, I think I sent this to the wrong place. Hold on a second. I'm going to put in my email and my website to everyone. I hope you guys can see that. So feel free to check out some of the work that I do. Email me. And I'll be just happy to mentor or people in any. This was good. Well, Stella, you can take over.
Okay,
and you can round us out.
Thank you, Dr. Judy. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Just a couple of things before you all go. We appreciate all of you for joining. We also want you to know that this is an ongoing training that we're doing. So we also have other topics that we've covered before. So the goal of our organization is to equip young people with everyday life skills. So a lot of the things that we're going to be training you on are not things that you're currently being taught in school, just like what Dr. Judith went today, but yeah, things that are essential in life. So for example, we've done a training on how you're uniquely you. The person who was asking about being compared to your brother, that's a good training for you to go over. We've done one on finances. These are tools, these are things that you're not being taught in school. So keep your eye out, because over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be sending out emails to let you know when we have our next trainings. So if you haven't put your email address in the chat, please put it, and we'll be sending you out these communications. And so that way you can, join us for these trainings. Please, also, I'm putting our social media, our YouTube channel in the chart. We typically upload the video. So we try to record all the trainings and then we upload it to our YouTube website. So I put the link there. Please go on YouTube, check out the trainings. Also help us like, subscribe, help us encourage your friends, your family, everyone to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. So this recording, once we upload it to YouTube, I can send you guys an email so that way it's available. And the other thing I was going to say is please keep the date of October 2nd of this year open. That's when we have our youth conference. And so we're going to be broadcasting to everyone. We're going to bring in speakers to train you, equip you. Like I said, these topics that we're covering are not things that are being covered in school, but these are topics that you need to be successful in life. So that's why we're bringing these trainings and teachings to you and to you also. Please keep October 2nd, again, keep that date open because we have our yearly youth conference. And then I'm going to be reaching out to all of you. I need to figure out a way to get some gifts to people who attended today. So I'm going to reach out to some of you. I just have to figure out, because I noticed a lot of people from King's, the schooling just attended to this. That was really wonderful. Thank you all. So I'll just figure out how to get some gifts out.
I think it might be maybe participation. So everyone, if you can maybe put your email addresses, make sure your email address is in the chat, because we'll have the logs of the chats.
Exactly. If you haven't put your email,
we can see people, we can see the amount of participation that people, how people were engaged in the talk, and we can use that to determine who gets some cash prizes. So
yes.
So if you are going to, if you are going to get a cash prize, you'll receive an email from us.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Judy. And then lastly, we just want you to also know, so we are an organization that believes in God, and I think this is a good way to close out today's training. Not trying to, but just because we know the importance of having faith in a higher power, someone that can help you as you go through your journey in life. And so if you don't know God, you've never have heard about God or have a relationship with God, it's just a simple prayer that I'm just going to pray, and that will close us out. And so just say, dear God, I come to you. I ask you to help me, and I ask you to reveal yourself to me in the name of Jesus and save me. Amen. So, and that's it. So any other final questions before we close off for today? All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Take care. And again, thank you for your participation. Take care. Bye. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.
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 Thank you very much.
Bye.
See you.